Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of that Football Data Guide podcast. I'm your host, Adam. We'll be looking at topics across the football world to try and derive insights from data around the world's top leagues and some of the lesser known ones. On this first episode, we're focusing on Troy Parrott, the Irishman who scored a last-minute goal to get his country into the World Cup qualifying knockout round, has had a superb season with Dutch side AZ Alkmaar, winning the Dutch Cup and scoring 24 goals in all competitions. After his Ireland heroics, they even named an airport after him. I think that was a funny social media thing. I've not fact-checked that. They may not have actually named an airport after him. And they then went on to fall at the final hurdle in the last qualifying round, so they will not be at the World Cup. Back to Parrott. He bid an emotional farewell to the AFAS Stadium on the 17th of May, and it looks clear that he'll leave the club this summer. His destination is still on loan, with newly promoted Premier League sides Coventry City and Ipswich Town being linked recently. I'd be surprised if there wasn't competition from further up the Premier League table when it comes to it, because Parrott has an excellent all-round game, which we're going to look into now. We're starting off with a look at some data visualizations of his season as a whole. This is for Alkmaar. This is just looking at the Eredivisie, and it's split into 6 different sections. You've got the pass map, which are the number of passes made. Your highlighted areas are the smaller passes. So that's where his shorter passes are made. And then you've got a bunch of progressive passes, chance created, and other metrics in there. The key thing from this pass map is that he does drop deep and get on the ball. You can see him drop as far back as the defensive third there, but he's not a massive passer of the ball or a progressive passer to get the ball into dangerous areas. You can see his expected threat created from those passes is minus 0.08. We then move on looking at carries and take-ons. So your purple ones there led to shots, the green led to a goal, and then the darker dots were his successful take-ons, where he's successfully gone around a player. So you can see a lot of short carries around the edge of the box area there. A few that led to goals, kind of the ones that are breaking into the box from the edge, and a bunch of his successful take-ons also around the edge of the box, which is quite a hard skill given that a lot of teams, when they're defending, will operate in a low block and try and force you into that space. So having the ability to take on a player from there is a very useful thing to have. You can see, moving on to the shot map, that he's got 16 goals from 40 shots on target. That's a pretty good conversion rate for a striker, mainly from inside the box. He doesn't waste much time shooting from distance. That's not his game. He looks to get inside the box and finish from all kinds of angles. And that can also be seen from his passes received. Now, this one is interesting. The key metric in passes received to look at is the expected threat received. So this is essentially tells you that he's receiving balls in dangerous areas. If a player plays a ball from a low threat zone into a high threat zone, this is how that metric's calculated. The pitch is split up into different zones. Then it generates a high amount of expected threats. You receiving 8.79 is a very good metric there. You can see he's received 97 passes into the penalty box, 302 into the final third. Some very good numbers there. And that's not to say that he doesn't put in the defensive work as well. Ball recoveries, you can see there the orange circles on the pitch dotted around. Large number of fouls in there, which you'd expect from a striker. And then the heat map shows that he's not your standard number 9s. He's not a number 9 that would like to have a lot of touches inside the box and not a lot elsewhere. He likes to be involved in all phases of the game. And you can see, in fact, the majority of his touches are on that edge of the box area, making him more of a 9.5, of which there's not too many in the game at the moment. And I think that's very interesting. The other similarity is when you compare him to some of the leading players in the game, his profile is actually very similar to Harry Kane's. Now, this is maybe not surprising given that the two were together at Tottenham for 5 years. And despite Parrott going out on loan, he will have been working with Kane and learning from Kane across those seasons. And when you look at the data, this is Harry Kane's data, you can see that Troy Parrott is the 7th most similar player to Harry Kane this season in terms of the way he's playing, the style of play, all of those metrics. So on this visual, Harry Kane's radar is the blue radar, Troy Parrott's is the red radar. You can see that attacking metrics, goal scoring, aerial ability, the defensive work side are all very similar. Parrott has a bit of an advantage in the carrying because he has more progressive carries, but Harry Kane is more of a creative player, and that's kind of the metric that really makes Harry Kane elite. That's not to say that Troy Parrott can't develop that. He's still young, so he can certainly improve on that, and that will help him take his game to the next level. Now, what does that mean on the football pitch, and what do you need around him? So you can see here, Parrott is circled in a game against NAC Breda, and he's not a number 9, as kind of the data shows. He's in that pocket on the edge of the box looking to receive the ball. He's got 2 players ahead of him. He's got another couple wide, and actually when you look at that picture, you've got 8 players there in the final third, with just the 2 centre backs left. So AZ were very much a possession dominating team. They like to attack with numbers, and having Parrott in there meant that they had someone who was comfortable receiving the ball around the edge of the box. This is another example from the same game where they're now 2-0 up. He receives the ball from the left winger, who is a right-footed left winger, likes to cut inside, receives it, and then plays a clever ball, little layoff into the box for the winger to pick up on, and I believe get a shot on target. Now, we said his passing isn't the best. This is a highlight from the 8th minute of that game. And actually, again, receiving the ball deep, he's got runners beyond him, this time the number 10, who we'll get onto a bit later. And he plays a lovely outside of the boot pass into his path. And I believe this one did end up resulting in a goal. And it's not just that, it's his vision and awareness around the box to play this short into play. So this one, he's received the ball from the number 27 there, or about to receive the ball from the number 27. The arrow to the left is where he lays it off. The arrow to the right is where he spins the defender and manages to get the ball back with some quick one-touch play that allows him to get a shot on goal there. And then the other thing that makes a good striker is clinical finishing ability. Now, this is very, very early on in the game against Feyenoord. He's through on goal. Now, a lot of strikers would hit it and hope, whereas he's done a lovely chipped finish here over the goalkeeper. So he has a range of finishing to his game. So that's what makes Parrott such a good striker and a good profile. Now, we mentioned that Coventry and Ipswich were the 2 teams interested. So how does he fit in to both of those sides? If we take a look at how AZ set up this season. So this graphic shows players' average positions for the most common starters. The key thing to get the best out of Parrott, as I mentioned, is runners from midfield. He doesn't like to be the focal point. And you can see here, Sven Meinens, who is the number 10, is very, very close to him there. When Parrott drops deep, you need people coming in and supporting him. Now, Meinens is a very impressive player and is actually a 6'2" tall attacking midfielder, which is quite rare. Tall 10s are coming into fashion a bit more. You've got Marvin Duksch at Birmingham this season was one, and then probably the most successful in the Premier League in recent times was when Philip Billing was playing in behind Dominic Solanke and scored, I believe, 15 goals that season, playing just off of Solanke. I like Billing. Minans has the ability to play on the right wing to cut in on his left foot, and he also filled in kind of a midfield trio. So it does allow you to switch between a 4-2-3-1 and a 4-3-3. Then you've got Coop Miners and Smith in the middle, and as you can see, they are very much central because the thing you've got to be aware of with average positions is you'll get some central movement if they cover both sides of the pitch. And what AZ like both of their midfielders to do is cover both areas and be a double pivot that switches. Smith himself is more advanced there. You can see he scored 2 goals, got 3 assists, and he's another one that can add that area in the bodies into the box. Then you've got Cassius as the right back, who is very advanced, which allows Patati to play inside of him. So again, that width allows him to invert, which gives more numbers around Parrott. Dahl on the left is a right-footed left winger. So again, with Parrott playing as that anchor and receiving the ball in those dangerous areas, to get the best out of him, you need runners off of him to then play the 1-2s. Miners scored a ton of goals. I think he's got 9 goals there. You can see the wingers did pretty decently as well. And that is how you get the best out of Parrott, or that's how Alkmaar got the best out of Parrott. The central midfielders running off and the good wingers that can invert inside and make those runs off of him and essentially flood the box. So does that actually fit into either Ipswich Town or Coventry's team? So we'll start with Ipswich Town. A similar sort of setup. You've got 2 inverted wingers here. You've got Sindre Vola Egli and Jaden Philogene. Although Egli didn't start all of the games, he was the most started player on their right wing. Their midfield 2 are a bit more of a sitter in Matasiwa and Taylor. So you probably wouldn't get as many runs there, although Taylor and Nunez kind of could drop and form a midfield 3, but they're not really players who would run beyond and crash the box. Hurst is the starting striker there, did rotate with Ivanathon, but he is also a very different profile to Parrott. What Parrott's addition could do is it could get the best out of Jaden Philogene, and both of those players like that short interplay, the 1-2 touches to get into the box, particularly against Premier League defenders. You've got Leif Davis, who would overlap down the left and provide the width for other players to come inside. But I think if Ipswich were to sign Parrott, they would need to change the profile of at least one of their midfielders, probably their number 10, maybe one of the other central midfielders, and then consider what they're doing on the right wing as well. Coventry, I think, have a slightly better fit. With Jack Rodoni, you've got a number 10 in there who's a bit more similar to how Minans played at AZ. You've got Torp, who's definitely way ahead of Grimes here in terms of average position. Grimes is more of the passer, and Torp could be your box breaking midfielder. And then with Sakamoto and Mason Clark both tucking in, it feels like Coventry is a much better fit in terms of getting the best out of Parrott if one of these 2 teams were to sign him. Thanks for joining me for that quick look at Troy Parrott and where he could fit into 2 of the newly promoted Premier League sides. If you like and subscribe, that would be very much appreciated. There'll be more content on the Premier League, the Championship, the World Cup's coming up, so look out for pieces on that. I'm going to provide 10 wonder kids or unknowns for you to look out for in future videos. But all that's left to say is thank you very much for watching, and see you soon.